Good morning, Quasar Markets. You've got your main man, Howard Hondo Greenberg, here on the post today. Big Beat is still out of town. He will be back on Monday. I actually will not be with us on Monday. I have some things I have to take care of. I'll be back on Tuesday, ready to go with you. Looking at a few things here, starting off this morning. Um, we just had jobs reports come out. October jobs reports highlighted only 12,000 new jobs, well below forecast. It was the smallest increase since December of 2020, right in the height of COVID. But, after two hurricanes, a strike, rolling furloughs, they anticipated a lot of noise in the Friday's October report. This is coming from RBC economist Michael Reed, and they expected payroll growth will slow to 164K, with the Boeing strike presenting the largest drag on headline growth, subtracting approximately 30,000 from the numbers. So it didn't seem, markets seem to like it so far. QQQ had gone up on the news, so did SPY a little bit, both up about 0.5% right now. So those, so far pretty muted response to it, but market seems to be at least fairly positive on it. I saw Deutsche Bank released a thing that said markets had gone through one of the toughest months experienced in 2024. The month of October saw all major financial assets tracked by the bank post negative returns in US dollars, apart from gold, silver, and oil. I will say they don't cover Bitcoin, because Bitcoin did have an up month. In fact, finished its first month above 70,000. So that was great to see there. Stocks and bonds suffered in the month that ended on Thursday, hit by a concern surrounding upcoming fiscal policy decision. And we're going to talk in a second a little bit about FedWatch and what has been the movement there. High levels of inflation and mounting tensions in the Middle East. We definitely have seen that. Bloomberg's global bond aggregate post its worst monthly performance in October since September of 2022. So worst monthly performance on global bonds in a couple of years. Markets have otherwise posted exceptionally strong earnings throughout the rest of the year, though. So, again, things don't just always go up. We've been talking here about a 10% to 20% pullback. We haven't seen all of that. Steve was calling for 460 on the QQQ. I know it got to a low of about 483, so you'd still have some room back down here. He's thinking it's going to revisit towards, the 200-day MA, so we'll see if that is the case. Silver, gold, Bitcoin all have done really well throughout the month. As I said, Bitcoin just completed its first monthly candle here above 70,000. I will point out again on the daily chart here, on Monday, I drew these boxes that showed where my expected move up was once we made that break through 69.5 or so. It pretty much hit it to the T. It actually exceeded my goal by a little bit. I had 73,300 or so in that range. It actually hit 73.7 or so. So it did over exceed that. And what we see is it did almost a perfect 1/2 retracement here. So it retraced right back to that 69.058 area here this morning. Did bounce at that level, now regained 70,000. Keeps me bullish still on Bitcoin. But let's look for a move back up here now. Do we see the move back up to that 73? And if it breaks that, we usually see about a half move to a full move above that. If I bring down this box a little bit, you see that would have us in right about 75,173 as the next target. So if we break our all-time high, that is my first target after that. Excuse me there. So that's what we're looking at. Oil prices have gone up a little bit. You can see WTI now above 71 again here. Is getting pushed down by the 50-day MA. I did notice that. I am curious to see if we if we can break through that today, or do we see that as sort of the high? A lot of that, is the expectation. Israel does expect to see a attack in Iran. There was some thought that it might even have been last night that it was coming because the airspace in Iran was cleared, but did not come. But there has been movement of ballistic missiles and stuff there. Axios reported that Israeli intelligence suggests Iran could attack through Iraqi territory in retaliation for last month's missile barrage, citing two Israeli sources. And the strike could happen within days and possibly ahead of the U.S. election, per the outlet. And, that's just, we don't want to see more tit for tat there, because most of the talk out of Israel has been that if that is the case, and we see another attack on Israel, that they will go after the oil and military infrastructure and nuclear infrastructure. So that would be bad overall. Next here, I do have up what is moving here after earnings. Still earnings. And I will say that, as we talked about, the last week or so, it is a stock pickers markets. We are seeing, some nice earnings reports move some things up, and we're seeing where if you miss or expectations that sometimes on some of the Mag 7 and others might be a little bit too high. We talk about that, or I talk about that a lot with JP Morgan stock. They're usually the first bank to report. And a lot of times we see that they get a little hit even on good earnings because expectations are they're going to over exceed by so much. So not saying that's the case with Apple here, but Apple is down about 1.73% in everything. Again, man, I'm happy Big Beat's not here today, because he'd be clapping on and telling me again he called it, which is true. He absolutely has called this. They did. They came up short in China. Although where him and I are both wrong, they did beat overall iPhone expectations. They did have a headline beat again. But what we've seen with a lot of these earnings reports, especially in the Mag 7, that investors seem to be sort of focusing in on one or two different categories. Within there that matters. We've seen a lot of it about CapEx, or capital expenditures, right? We know that Microsoft talked about that. Meta, both of them had gotten hit pretty hard, as they said that they had a lot more money to spend in, to catch up, or to take over the AI arena. So that was the case. We do see China as being an issue here with Apple. They missed their expectations by about $1 billion. So they came in at about $15 billion in revenue over in China, when it was expected to be 16. So it was a pretty decent size miss there in China. Again, we've been talking about that here on the show, that China, the weakness in China in general, and especially when it came to American-made products, and Apple being a big one there. As I mentioned, CapEx, they actually said that they are not spending as much as others, that they sort of had a hybrid approach to it. That came from their CFO. So they said that they're not spending quite as much there. Tim Cook did come on and say that they had rolled out the iOS 18.1 that had Apple's intelligence in it. Only available, by the way, to those that have iPhone 16s, iPhone 15 Pros. Did not know that. But that it was being adopted at a very high rate. And we've seen that everywhere. And when any of these, companies, whether it be the co-pilots or even Gronk on Twitter, we've seen adoption pick up pretty quick. So that is why we do still feel that is the case. I did see also the Mac and the iPad, their sales went up, but they were shy of forecast. One that matters a little bit more to me was that they had a slight miss in services, and part of that is because their services business is one of their higher margin businesses. They were looking for about 25.26 billion, came in under 25, so that was there. Again, we know that was the case. So Apple here down about 1.5. I was looking, I don't really see a real play here. To me, it's in the middle of a range. If I kind of come through here, this is the daily chart that I have up. You can see, not exactly, but, well, I mean, it is pretty much. We've had this move up from 214, 233, back to 214, back up to 233, back to 214. Now we've come back, even as high as 237. We're right dead in that middle. There is a pretty good area of support, liquidity zone that I will highlight here. Right about in this range, you can see we've got a pretty good liquidity zone where we've spent a lot of time. So that's what I'd be looking at. It's at the lower edge of that right now. If it breaks below, you probably will see this pull back towards that. First target would be 221, then down to 214. So that's what I'm seeing on Apple. On the other side of that, Amazon. Nice earnings beat, up about 6.88%. You can see threatening to break that 200 handle, which would put it at its, I don't want to say that, I believe all-time highs, definitely 52-week highs. Let me pull up a monthly chart here and see if that would be, yeah, that would be all-time highs. So, and the breakdown there on a little bit into Amazon's business. They had strong business in North America. They reported sales of 95.5 billion, up about 8.7 from the same quarter a year ago, and about 3 billion above. They were, consensus there. So a pretty strong move there. Operating expenses for the region rose less than sales, up 7.5%. So operating margins were up 5.9% from 4.9% the year before. Another bigger takeaway that I had here was Amazon's international business has swung to an operating profit. Over the past, it's been a drain on the company, and we are seeing it now move into the positive. So Amazon's international business increased 11.7%. So good to see that there. Again, their AWS cloud growth was 19%, and it was a little bit shy of what the market estimates had been. So, same, we saw Microsoft had problems with their Azure. That hit their stock really hard. Didn't have that same effect here. One that I also didn't really realize is Amazon makes their own chips. I did not know that. And they're seeing significant interest in those chips. So their CEO, Andy Jassy, came out and said they're seeing significant interest in their AI chips, which it does design in-house. The company has gone back to its manufacturing partners multiple times to produce more than expected. I do want to try to do a little bit of a channel check there and figure out who those producers are. Could be something in there for us. I do have more of that on something down that line here. The other thing that I saw take away, their pharmacies, they're going to roll that out in 20 new cities there. So nearly half of the U.S. will have the ability to have their medications delivered to their door within hours. And I will tell you, as someone who lives sort of in the, farmland of Ohio, that's a bigger deal out here than in major cities. But, we had a Rite Aid in town as the only real, we had two pharmacies, a compounding pharmacy that was locally owned, a pharmacist in his business. And then we had Rite Aid, and Rite Aid closed. The pharmacist stopped taking new clients because he can't keep up. And the closest Walmart is, 10, 15 miles away. For some people, it's now 30 minutes away. And this is a big deal. So I do think it could be a pretty good revenue driver for Amazon in the future. For those of you that are wondering there, where can Amazon, keep on moving? Their capex was going to be about 75 billion this year. As it builds out their AWS and their AI infrastructure. Management said that the faster they grow demand, the faster they have to invest in data centers, networking gear, and hardware. And Jassy did say investing in AI was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Another big takeaway for me from a guy, again, running one of the largest businesses in the world, saying, hey, listen, this AI isn't a fluke. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So keep that in mind. Amazon Robotics, they talked a little bit about that. Still very early in that game here. One of the other things I thought that was interesting is that Jassy said he believes Amazon has more cloud services demands than it could fulfill, even if it had greater supply, as companies clamor for AI chips whose costs don't break the bank. He also restated the case for Amazon's core retail business as e-commerce becomes a regular part of shopping at its rivals. He touted lower prices, deals it could work out with suppliers, and bigger advantages with service speeds. Again, a takeaway that I got out of there is e-commerce is not dead, as some people sometimes have said here. So they also soothed their fears with their guidance. They ended up giving upbeat view with an outlook of 16 billion to 20 billion on their retail for operating income, and that was compared to a 17.3 consensus view. So we're seeing that moving up. One that about time, hopefully, here that we can get a turnaround. Boeing, now at 152.53 here. Oh, on Amazon, I don't really have that's not one that I'd be looking. It would have to break 201, break the all-time high for me to look for a breakout here. You do have a little bit of an undercut and maybe rally here off the 50-day MA. That you can see here after that first move up to 195 on Wednesday. We now drop down a little bit higher than we see. You've got higher high, higher low. Do we see an undercut and rally here? I wouldn't bet against it, but I don't know that there's a ton of upside potential. I think you're going to get in issues there as you approach that 195 area for sure. If it can get that high, I actually think 190 is going to give it a little. I'm sorry. Yeah, this 200 area. I don't know, but have to really break through 201.20. Boeing is has a tentative new offer for its striking workers. They're gonna vote on November 4th, Monday, and you can see shares up only 2% here, so not a big move yet. I think people still concerned, will this pass or not? This will now be the third vote. What I did see was when asked why, an analyst today on CNBC was asked why maybe this would be the time. They're offering a $10,000 bonus basically for employees to sign this, and the feel is a lot of the younger employees that weren't part of the pension will move their votes. And keep in mind, the first time they voted, it was 96% or so that voted against it. It was in the mid 60s. The second time, so the hope is that they can do it. They are also in the New Deal. The average machinist will be making about 119,000 annually, up 44,000 from the $76,000 average. So they are getting a nice increase there. We know that the holdup had really been around the pension, so we'll see what's going on there. Let's take a quick look before we go in the others. Tick still positive at about 140 right now. Not really a ton of movement here over the last 15 minutes when it comes to QQQ or SPY. They've been trading about sideways at a half a point here after the 830 move. So not seeing a ton there. Trying to see if there's any major movers from yesterday's earnings reports or the day before. WEN, Wendy's, looks to be moving up about 3.5% here after taking that big fall. So it looks like folks trying to buy back up that the drop. They've taken about more than a half reversion back up there. So that's a pretty good move on Wendy's. Robinhood has bounced back about 1.32%. One's continuing to slide. Roku, which lost 17%, now down another 1.22% here. That's a tough one. I don't know how they make money. I mean, I have Rokus in like 4 TVs at my house. But to be honest with you, all of them were bought years ago, and we don't pay for any services. I just use it as a way to access the internet, basically. Well, Wi-Fi, I guess. CVNA, Carvana, after being up, taking a little bit of a retrace, but not much there. A little more of a breather than a retrace. Roblox, a little bit of a retrace here, down about 1.28 after that big 20% jump on their beat. Trying to see SMCI continuing to get hit here, down another 1.68. This is one, man, I don't know where you find a bottom. This one definitely scares me more than like Boeing. I don't think Boeing, we know what the problem there is when it comes to the strike. When the strike ends and they get their act together and hopefully produce, planes with less issues on time, as the CEO of American Airlines said, that's when that will move up. SMCI might have some bigger cracks. It's the old, where there's this much smoke, there's usually fire. So, Intel was one after hours, up about 6.69% here. They did have some nice earnings also. And their bigger takeaway was that they talked about a $10 billion cut in their cost cutting plan, targeting a 15% staff reduction, and that their capital spending would down 20%. So people seem to like that a lot. Nice move up by Intel here this morning. This is one that could be played for a decent move back up towards that 24. You've got about a 10% upside, in my opinion, still here. Maybe even a little more if we look at the daily chart. Let's take a quick look there. Yeah, you've got room, I'd say, to 23, 28. So Intel's got a little room here. Regains might get a boost off that 50-day MA. Got to break that resistance first. But if it could get through that 50-day MA at 21. Oh, it's over it. I'm not right there. Sorry, I keep on doing that. My pre-market versus the other. Yeah, 24, like I said originally. 24. Sorry about that. I keep on looking at the pre-market. Let's see what we've got here. What else did we have on our list today? Big move up by Team, which is Altasian software company. They jumped 21% here in pre-market following a fiscal first quarter earnings and revenue that were better than Wall Street forecasts. Revenue in the period jumped 21% to 1.19 billion compared with expectations of 1.16. So while not a huge beat, definitely moving it up significantly here. Put it on track to try to get back up to its all-time high. Abbott Laboratories was up about 4.9% here after a jury found the company wasn't responsible for a young boy's intestinal disease, the result of a lawsuit that alleged Abbott failed to warn some that its formula for premature infants increased the risk of bowel disease. So this is up on the news of that suit ending. Looks like they again wants to challenge an all-time high here. This one's a little bit more interesting. Again, I think a break of 119 here, you could see some decent upside, but also, again, a spot where if it gets rejected, you could look for a drop back down to that 114 level. So definitely want to keep an eye on today. U.S. Steel about even. They reported third quarter earnings that beat analyst expectations. The steel maker reported earnings before interest, tax, and depreciation, or EBITDA, of 319 million on sales of 3.9 billion, down from a year earlier of EBITDA of 593 million on sales of 4.4 billion. These earnings declined as a result of lower steel prices. Stock gained around 0.2%. Keep that on mind. Another big jumper here was, I said I was going to mention one that was getting a move because of Apple. Global Star. Global Star was up almost 40%. Even, I want to say up even more than that earlier today. And that was, let's see, I can tell you that. Yeah, it had gone up as high as I forgot to hit that. It had been as high as $1.80 here this morning. And that was after it was disclosed about an expanded agreement with the iPhone maker Apple. Global Star will deliver expanded services to Apple over a new mobile satellite service network, including a new satellite constellation, expanded ground infrastructure, and increased global MSS licensing. The satellite communication company said Friday Apple will prepay for certain services to be delivered and added. So, like I said, it had soared, and we'll see where it goes from there. We are about 5 minutes from the open here, 5 minutes from the open. Again, with earnings today a little bit more muted, we could see a follow through here today. We'll see what it starts off at the bottom. I'm looking again, Bitcoin pretty good here, and anything above that 69,200 area keeps me pretty bullish. Gold trying to break, back above that, trying to break that 2,800. Hasn't been able to do it. Got to 2790. Gold back below that 34, back to 33. So as I mentioned, that sort of did form a double top there. Came down, is moving back up today. Brent up, so expect your gas to move up a little bit here over the weekend. Those are most of the big movers that I had on my sheet here. Oh, no. Here we go. We're missing some. Charter Communications seeing itself have a decent move up here after their earnings beat. So they are, as we know, the cable company out of Connecticut, and they operate Spectrum, which I have here and not a huge fan of. They had a net income of $1.28 billion or $8.82 a share for the quarter, up from about $1.255 billion or $8.25 a share in the year earlier period. Revenue rose to $13.795 billion from $13.5 billion. So a nice little beat. They lost about 110,000 internet customers in the period, while it was expected to lose 250,000. So a nice beat there. That was split between 154,000 residential customer losses and a net gain of 5,000 in the small to medium-sized business market at the end of the quarter. Company has 30 million internet customers. Their total video customers decreased by 294,000. And FactSet actually expected that to be a decline of 374,000. So that actually improved over the second quarter. Their mobile business, which is a little bit smaller, that rose by almost 500,000 here to 9.4 million. The company has been growing its Spectrum mobile business, which operates under a mobile virtual network operator model that leverages Verizon's network, so it runs off of Verizon. They did lower their CapEx forecast, so again, this could be one of the reasons. That's been a big in play this year, or this earnings, is companies that have lowered those have seen their stock prices move up as accordingly. Only lowered it from 12 billion to 11.5, and said the decrease primarily reflects lower expected network evolution and line extension spend in 2024, partly offset by higher expended rebuild spend related to plant restoration following the recent hurricanes. So we see that. Next thing I actually had on my charts here was Chinese EV makers. A lot of them reported here. They are seeing a move up across the board here. NIO up about 0.78. XPeng, which goes by XPEV, up about 1.07. Li Automobiles up about 0.68. And they did, see record demand, but it wasn't, moving the needle that much here. These are the U.S. listed American depositories of these companies. And if we look at it a little closer, NIO delivered 21,000 vehicles basically, and it was similar to what they did in September, but up 30% from last year. So, they're seeing a little bit of a spike, and we've seen that at the cost of Tesla, right? Tesla has been getting hurt because of what's going on. We are 1 minute from the open here. 1 minute from the open. Basically deliveries have grown about 26% for some of these companies, or for the three companies combined. But you can't really trust that that continues, or you can't trust the numbers there. So, okay, we are open. Let's see what we get here. Let's get to the QQQ, see what happens here. We are seeing a quick move to the downside here. Quick move to the downside, 485.48. Trying to bounce back here. SPY a little bit more of a muted drop down, but still, it was a little bit of a drop down here in the opening hit. Bitcoin off the start, holding over 70 here, but again, also everything seems to get a little bit of a sell-off. Gold, everything on the first tick spiked down. See what happens, except silver. Silver moving up already. Oil feeling neutral here. See what happens. Amazon off the start here. Dropping down a little bit. See if we get any runners one way or the other. BA losing a little bit here, so BA getting hit. Seeing some sell-off here. Some people that probably taking a little bit of profit, although that's only a 1.45, but up from its lows of about $5. Coinbase got hit real hard yesterday, lost about 10% after their earnings reports, and they did have a pretty big miss. They were expected to bring in an EPS of 44 cents and came in at 28 cents, and that was on about the same revenue as is well, about a 4% miss on revenue, but a 37% miss on its EPS. Trying to bounce here. Let's see what happens as it enters, beats the 50-day MA. I do like if it regains the 50 for a move back up towards that 200. So Coinbase would be one I'd be interested in. Again, I think that they're doing a lot that people don't realize outside of just being an exchange right now. They have a lot of businesses, and as more and more TradFi moves into the crypto space, they tend to be one of the first stops that gets called about how to do that. So you can see it bouncing up here. I do like that. That being said, I wonder what Mara's doing on the way Bitcoin's moving. Not much, pretty muted here, up about 1.25. We did see a lot of the Bitcoin mining companies get hit yesterday after Riot had less than stellar reports. So you can see they had a big drop down yesterday. They are bouncing back a little bit here today too, up about 1.84. So we're seeing fairly positive movement out of most of the Bitcoin miners so far. Mara up about 0.89%, Riot 1.67, TerraWolf, the lone one that I follow here, down about 0.31. Bit Digital up 2.62, so a nice move up by most of them. Hut 1.9, Hive 1.08, so nice move up. MSTR, after their earnings yesterday, where they announced that they will be purchasing $42 billion in Bitcoin over the next 21 months. So keep that in mind for all of you that are just trying to decide whether you are interested to get into Bitcoin there. That's going to be good for the price. Up about 70,000, trying to get back over 70,500 here. So it is moving up in the right direction. Apple now down almost 2% on the day. Amazon up 7.22. Chevron, we did see Chevron up about 4.25% here. I do have some news on that from their earnings reports. Their stock rose after the oil company reported quarterly earnings above analyst expectations, even as earnings decreased from a year ago. Their third quarter adjusted earnings, their EPS was $2.51, which topped analyst expectations of around $2.43. And we've seen, like I said, them now at $1.54, up about 4% on the day. Third quarter earnings did decrease compared with last year. Primarily due to lower margins on refined product sales, lower realizations, and the absence of prior year favorable tax items. So they did say worldwide net oil equivalent production was up 7% in the quarter versus a year ago. Um, so they did report. Exxon also reported. They're up about 1.5% here, trying to continue to move up. They said that they overcame a fall in profit in amid oil price weakness as the oil giant shares kept their momentum going. They beat earnings expectations and hiked its dividend, clearing of a high bar for shares to keep rising. They reported earnings per shares of 1.92, beating estimates of $1.87. They also announced a fourth quarter dividend of 99 cents, a 4% increase. Seems to be enough to move the stock up, as we can see, about 1.83, not as much as Chevron. They said they relied on higher output to offset the weakness in oil prices, which have fallen around 11% over the past 6 months. The company reported its highest production level in more than 40 years at about 3.2 barrels per day. Let's take a look and see what's happening here with pumpers. Okay. See La Rosa Holdings. This one's been a pumper a couple of times. Let's see what's going on here. You can see the pump, although that's diminishing returns. Doesn't look like one that would be in play here, but let's take a look and see what we get here. We go VIR Biotech. VOI. Take a look here. This one could be interesting. Take a look here. The daily chart first. So you can see that big move up. It's up about 7% on the day. Here's one if it breaks 817. You've got some nice movement all the way up towards 9. So this one could be one definitely in play here. Here you go. It's coming off a halt, it looks like. You just hit 816. You break 819 here. This would be one to go after. Right at 811. So this is definitely one here that's looking to try to run VIR Biotech. Trying to see what they've got here as listings. Only thing I see is that 3 hours ago that Needham maintained a price target at 19. It's only trading at 801, so that's a 100% increase. So this is in play here. VIR is one to keep an eye on here, everybody. Let's keep an eye on VIR here. Let me pull up and see, make sure if this halted. Is that what's going on here? I don't have all that pulled up yet. Hold it 1 second here, but VIR at 801. VIR. Now at 805. And again, what I was looking at here, a break above 811. Need a break about 811. $803. Here it goes. It's trying. Let's see what we have here. Take a look at TMTC too. TMTC. Set an alert on this for 812. See if it breaks 8.12. I'm setting an alert here. VIR, setting an alert. VIR at 812. And I'm going to take a look at TMTC. Acquisition Corp. Not a ton of volume here. Definitely looks like it wants to pump though. What's this volume looking like? Nah. It's trying to pump. There just isn't enough volume here to play around yet on this. This one's interesting. It'll be fun to watch. TMTC, one to keep an eye on. I'll put it in. Again, I'd be looking for it to break. Make a break up to about 830 here. Sitting at 760 on a halt. Still above VWAP. Yeah. Could be in play. This one's got a little less volume. You'd be looking for volume here. I'd be looking to see if volume comes in. If it does, although you can see all the volume was sell volume as soon as it broke above this 753. So if it can start to turn that to green on the VPVR, that would be strong here for the move. Let's see what else is going on. Tick positive 473. Definitely seeing a move up here. There goes our alert. It just hit 812 here. Let's take a look. 812 around an 821. Look, I told you on that one. I did not get a trade in. Unfortunately, I can't do it, but you can see that 812 right to 821. Looks like it's stopped here. 820. Again, this one we talked about. Man, that was, I wish I was able to trade in there on that, but 819. There's another one we called here. We got you in on it. That was right off of my scanner here, looking at what's pumping over the last 5 minutes. Take a look at KDLY. That's definitely not one I don't like. APLM, LRHC. I'm going to throw in a volume disclaimer on this. So I want them to at least have okay, so now at least I want to see if they have volume spikes of at least 5% too. Brings our list way down, as you can see. Let's take a look here. There we go. Now we're looking at stuff that has more of a play. It could be interesting here. It hasn't made its second move up. Let's go a little further out here on this. It's another one, not a bad little double bottom here. It's actually an undercut and rally if it rallies up here. Take a look at the hourly a little better here. See if we can't find another one. Yeah, it's right at decent support, break, and resistance. You can see how this thing spikes. This could be one that's worth a little play here. Not gonna lie, SGD. This could be worth a little play here. Let's see what else we got. TKLF. Look at that one. It's not, oh, let's see here. Phoenix Motor. That's moving in the wrong direction. VS Media, that's a pumper. Found a nice bottom at 121 here for a move back up towards the VWAP. This is one that could be in play here if I see a little volume. I don't like B4 is giving me two. Nah. We know global stat what it did already. This one's a little bit tougher to see it make another run up here. This was news based upon its partnership with Apple to provide satellite services for them. That one be a little bit tougher to see a second pump. That's moving the wrong way. Whoa, Stericycle, what's going on here? That's a definite breakout here. What does that look like from a volume standpoint here? They're at almost a million already. So this one's in play. Average volume is 1.17 million. They're almost there already. They had earnings which moved this up. But if you could see a break above 62 here, you've got some pretty decent movement. A break above 62. This could definitely be interesting. A break above 62 could definitely send you flying here. So this one's not a bad look too. SRCL, another one you could keep an eye on here. SRCL. QQQ moving up. We're seeing a lot of things move up. Let's keep our eye open here. I'm going to take a look and see what's going on with the larger cap here. So we're going to take a look and only take in market caps 10 billion and above. And I'm going to care about the volume change. Again, these are going to be 5-minute movers I'm looking at, but we're looking at bigger market caps, 10 billion and above here. So see if we can catch anything on a move. Watch Capital trying to move. DoorDash also. I don't like the look at that. GoDaddy trying to move. Not seeing a whole lot there. Take a look at small cap, see what's going on there. Triller, here we go. Here's a runner. Triller, TILLR. Definite runner here. This is a newer listed stock. I don't know anything about it, but it's definitely running here. Definitely running. Triller Group. Let's see if we can find out what that is. Technology package software. Just signed a new CEO on the 21st. This one's interesting, giving you buys across the B4 here. 450 high of the day. It's been as high as 886. Definitely could be one to keep an eye on here. ILLR. Let's add that to the watch list today. It's definitely an interesting one. VIR, we're already on this one. 857 now. Again, we talked about that at 810. At crossing 812 now at 857 and running. We said for watch to move towards that 922 mark. Does look like it's trying here, man. I wish I had gotten in on that one. Nice move up here. I would, if you are in this, let's look to get a stop loss in here in that 830 area. Lock in those profits. Take 20 cents on an $8 move. $8 stock. Come on, let's keep running here. 860. So VIR, we called it here again. VIR. Again, that came right off the screener. Seen a couple of stops here. We're not in this 865. Let's see if I can take a look at this. BTSGU. Bright Spring Health Services. They dumped hard. They tried to pump once, dumped hard. I don't like the look of that. Let's take a look. QMCO also. QMCO. Quantum Corp. There's not enough volume there. Okay. Nothing too exciting in those. CRMD. Here's another pumper here you could look at. CRMD. See, drop down after earnings and earning beat, bounce back, trying to pump here. This one is definitely in play too. CRMD 1039. Let's see what it does here. Wish I caught that back as it broke through VWAP here. Let's take a look. ABUS. Got a bunch of them. ABUS, Arbitrus Biopharmacy running here. ASPI. Another runner. So definitely a lot of runners. We're definitely seeing this scanner is definitely bringing us in. Gonna have to fine tune it a little bit more. Maybe use, quite honestly, I think I'm gonna have to go to the 1 minute as what we really are watching, because these are happening fast and furious. We want to catch that before it runs away. Here we go. Like this would be an example here. VNet, here you go. If this can break through VWAP, would be an interesting one here at 330. Break above 330. LX. That's a tough one to chase at this point. Definitely a lot in the mix here. Definitely a lot in the mix. Okay, we're about 10 minutes before the end of the hour. I do have Stephen Flanagan coming on at 10 o'clock, Mr. Currency himself, to talk a little bit about what's going on in the UK, what's happening with this UK sterling after all of their budget talks this week. What does he think is going to happen at FedWatch and more? He did call. We were looking at, it has taken a nice jump up though. The way that he had called out the sterling to U.S. Currency, he called out on Wednesday when it was at $1.30 for watch for a drop. My question though is it bounce back up into that sort of support zone? I want to know from him whether or not what he sees there. DXY now back down below 104. He sort of called for that. So again, you know, what he's been telling us has been right in line. We'll get his views there. I am going to take a second here to get myself a little bit more coffee, and I will be right back up at 10 o'clock.
Okay, how are you, Howard? Oh yeah. Yep. Right. Oh, I didn't see them. Okay. Okay. Hopefully, I'll have one at the top. I wanted to talk FX volatility ahead, set to explode. Oh yeah. Beam me in.
One. I am back, Quasar Markets Live, and I have our main currency guru, the man himself, Stephen Flanagan. How you doing this Friday?
I'm doing good, Howard. Wrapping up the week and looking for a big week ahead. I think we're looking at a FX volatility is set to explode. And let me emphasize a couple of factors. One, geopolitical risk in the Mideast is rising. You know, the reports that you've alluded to is Iran's getting ready for another move here. Second, probably the bigger one, US elections on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then third, the one that really is the tectonic plates underneath of what moves currencies, interest rate decisions on Thursday, Bank of England and the Fed. Let's precede that with Tuesday, the RBA in Australia. So you could have an explosive week next week in the currency markets, especially if we look back in history. 2016, you had an 8% move in some currencies
Right.
as a result of the US elections.
Yeah, I am not surprised by that comment at all. You brought it up the other day, and we're seeing that volatility hit the market already, right? We've had ups and downs the last few days. October, gold, silver, and Bitcoin, the only three things up. Everything else that Deutsche Bank covers, and actually Deutsche Bank doesn't even cover Bitcoin. I had to add that into their report from this morning because they actually said only gold and silver were up on major commodities, but I have to change that. We got to talk a little bit. You said UK coming out the same day as us, but they had some data already in the last couple of days, tonight, overnight. What's going on there? I see bond prices going crazy.
Well, you know, within the UK, you've got a 10-year bond auction on Tuesday. And typically, ahead of these auctions, money will move into a currency that's looking to perhaps place itself in a higher rate. They are at 5% presently. I am expecting the Bank of England to make. I think that they're going to try to get out in front of the curve here and do a 0.5% cut as well. And based on the numbers out of the U.S. today, well, watch out for the Fed now to keep pace there. So the UK is in a tough position here. We've just put their budget out, and as I've been emphasizing to you,
Yeah.
a massive tax rise in the UK. Now, no matter how you slice and dice it, that is, in itself, in its simplistic form, it is taking money away from the marketplace, which
Right.
could be used to, drive economic growth. So that's a negative, and that's why I really am focusing on the sterling right now.
And I have to point out that you have been all over the sterling perfectly. We first talked about the fact when it bounced off of this level here at 130, you called for it to make a move up to 135. You didn't get all the way there, only 134.40 or 134.50, so tighten those up if you want to keep your spot here. Just kidding.
Yes.
And then you called for it when it broke below that to watch for it to get down to 129, and on a break below there, and you mentioned this on Wednesday when it was up at 130, that it was ripe for a move back down towards this 200-day MA, and you've even targeted longer term for $1.26 here. You can see it didn't get, again, not all the way to the 200, but that's a pretty good move from 130 down to 128 when it comes to, that kind of move. That's a pretty big move and Forex overnight, basically. So I have to say, you definitely nailed that. It did bounce back into the middle of this range. Do you think we
Yep.
challenge 130 before we start to move back down again?
As in many of these markets, Howard, they are overextended. And if we look at a daily chart with a stochastics, which is a momentum sort of indicator, um, we're overdone on the downside. So I am looking at a possible test here. You see, outside of sterling, we've got to look at the U.S. as the main play. What are the dynamics in the U.S. right now? We
Right.
know my view is quite weak in sterling, so it will play out. But given this payroll number and the sudden weakness, which we kind of did talk about, based
Yeah,
on that
absolutely.
statistical quirk in the previous month's number,
Right.
we did expect this number to be more realistic. And what it's showing is that the labor market is still beginning to have some weakness in it. So the U.S. factor is probably arguing here for sterling to relieve some of the oversold. I think you could see a 130 play here, probably pretty much so, and maybe an extension up to 131 before we begin to get into Thursday's market and the Bank of England. I am looking for a Bank of England cut, so I would be looking to take advantage of this up move to perhaps position myself short sterling ahead of the Thursday decision.
You heard it here from our currency expert, the guy who was running JP Morgan's trading desk for a long time on the FX side. So this is a guy that knows, and like I said, he has absolutely nailed every call he has made on the sterling on this show over the last
Now,
month and a half. So,
I just want to make sure I'm fair to your viewers here. I was on the electronic trading side of the
okay,
business, and I basically was running risk management on the e-commerce side. But what it does is it has given me a unique ability to see the flows as the electronic marketplace dominates how things are traded today. Boom, let's look at yesterday in the US equity market.
right,
you know, I mean, that was a really sharp move. But once these models and computers begin to turn and show a direction, they just keep going. The path of least resistance is how they trade, which plays perfectly into the big beats theory of looking for things that get overdone. Look at his oil call that morning at the dead low, picking
right.
up oil.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen it. It's mean reversion trade. It's been two trades: mean reversion and undercut and rally.
That's right.
That's what we've seen is either something has strong momentum and momentum hasn't stopped on some of these. It's just amazed me at Carvana and some of these others that have just exploded. And then the beatdowns from the others. I did notice that the UK also talked about that they're going to be borrowing more money. So very similar to what we know is going to happen here in the US, right? Is that we're going to continue to see that spiraling effect there, which would be, is that part of your thesis into why the sterling weaker?
Yeah, well, once we be yes, it would be part of my thesis on that. But again, the macro issue that we will be dealing with in the years ahead will be government debt,
Right,
country debt, because we're seeing that that the UK is looking to expand that. The next up is going to be the Euroland because they're going to have to get themselves out of the doldrums of 0.2, 0.5% economic growth, which cannot sustain the economic recovery that they need to be competitive in this new world environment. So
right.
once the euro starts doing, the debt explosion too, which many of those countries are. We've seen France. We already know Italy has.
Italy, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. It's going to undercut the bigger picture. Howard, it comes right into your ballpark of crypto.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is a safe haven. It's up today. We had our first monthly close over 70K. So as you know, some of these round numbers become important when it comes to the world of Forex and if you want to put crypto. Well, I don't put crypto again. I separate Bitcoin from everything else when it comes to the market. I do like other things in crypto. I'm not a Bitcoin only guy. I'm a Bitcoin mostly guy. Let's put it that way. So it's, we're definitely seeing that. I was not surprised by the number today, although I guess I was when it really comes out at that low of a number on labor. You're like, is there a zero missing? Because of what we're used to. But with we knew that was sort of coming. What surprised me is, again, like you said, and I'd have to ask if maybe, and I know this isn't your area of expertise, but Fed Watch, okay, it went from about 95% on a 25 basis point cut, 5% no cut, to that news, which everybody knew was coming out. I mean, it wasn't far from expectations. And it moved it to 99% 25 basis point. But what I was surprised is that other 1% now is on a half point. Is that in play? Is that going to start to get more momentum? Because that's what we saw last time, right? Is it just started with a little blip that said 25 to 50, and then all of a sudden it went quickly.
Well, that's at the crux of why I say volatility is set to explode. Yes, I do think that the Fed will move a 0.5%. And I think the Bank of England will move a 0.5% as well.
Those are
And I
big
think
calls. Those are big calls. You are going against the market, and I don't disagree with you. I'm of the philosophy that once we saw the first half point, they're not afraid to do it. I was surprised by the half the first time because my view was inflation at this ridiculous level. We only moved up in quarter points. So my common sense was we would sort of have that same approach to the downside. But I think that this Fed has shown that they're willing to do more this time. They're afraid of being caught behind, and
inflation is at their desired goal. So
right?
now we are full on to their second mandate, which is
Labor.
growth.
Yeah.
And we saw the GDP begin to decline. All the numbers we're seeing are showing a moderating growth, and they can't. That's their second mandate. There is no reason for interest rates to be globally in certain countries at the levels they are based on the level of inflation now. So
Right.
let's get through this, silly talk that longer for higher. It's ridiculous. Every one of these forward guidance that the Fed has tried to show us since 2022 is it just blows up in their face. Let's
Right.
get back to looking at economic growth. We need to keep the economy growing. In the US, we like 2.5, 3.5% growth. If Europe is happy at sub zero point 0.5, fine, but they can't be, and
No.
nor can the UK. So rates are coming down. And I think the sooner they get this medicine and they get into the mantra of moving lower, the better. So my call is 0.5% next week. And this is why the currency markets, I believe, are going to get very volatile.
Yeah, and you add in like we've already talked a little bit about with Iran and Israel, and I've mentioned earlier today. I don't know if you were listening. I do think that this is, if Iran makes the mistake of launching again, there is going to be no holds. No, the Israel's made it clear they will not hold back. They will go after the nuclear sites. They've proven they can get to them. They will go after the oil. It's they've got the swell of supporters of the Israelis right now is at like an all-time high for it. So, I do unfortunately, I just pray that they don't, that Iran gets some common sense and says, you know what, let's not do this because the tit for tat is going to explode, in my opinion, before the election if it does.
We've talked about how geopolitical risk has almost been a secondary thought in this marketplace, given the levels that we're at.
Yeah,
I would so wholeheartedly agree. We pray nothing happens, no more escalation, and that peace can prevail. However, if there is another retaliatory strike, I would have to say at that would be the straw that breaks the camel's back to me, because we now will get a regional escalation. And in a
yeah.
regional escalation, again, just another factor in my currency market forecast of a volatility explosion. But you're going to couple that then with equity markets, having massive amounts of
Right.
volatility to
That
the.
that's where all like you said, that's where the floodgates open, and you could see that 20% that Steve's talked about to the downside that could come. That would be sort of the multiplier, I would call it, to the system. Because it would turn every model, and because then that's when sometimes the models even get overridden for a second and people pull triggers on trades, and that's where the difference is. You know, and
So
I hope we don't
let's
see that.
talk about that volatility explosion. There is one area that you look for, and that would be to buy the yen. Sell dollars, buy yen, because the yen in a global expansionary geopolitical event is going to become the safe haven currency.
Right.
It's very odd with interest rates where they are in Japan, but it is a currency that the world does look for as a safety.
Well, wouldn't it be because it has no volatility in general? It is so stable because there is, their interest rates move at glacial, rates there. So that is a good call to keep in mind, that would be one to keep an eye on. Um, what would be the biggest at risk in that case of, so, U.S., if the dollar is going up in this case, and the yen's going up, what would be the other side of that? Would that be that you could
Well,
trade? Because obviously the ruble would be part of that, but you can't do
yeah,
anything with that.
I would think that the euro would be hit, hard. Um, Currencies that you'd have to look at that could suffer in cases like this would be the euro, sterling. You could see Swiss franc gain as a traditional safe haven currency pair.
Right.
But the yen is the big one. And keep in mind, I believe the dollar yen was an 8% move after the previous election in 2016. So that's another currency pair that we want to watch very carefully. But the major currencies, the dollar would probably be the safe haven aspect. So you would look at all currencies to simply, all correlation trades would come apart. And when
Actually, a bigger
correlation,
move. November of 16
yep,
moved from 100. The total move was 100 to 118.
right, yep. Total
Um,
move was a huge move, yeah.
yeah, so that's a great call too
And,
there.
let's keep in mind, if we look at the geopolitical risk out of the Mid East, okay, and put that aside, I like the yen in that case. But if we move into a U.S. election play, you've got dollar mex sitting here at, if we get much above a 2.2 break, you're looking at, you know, dollar mex has been a currency because of 10.5% interest rates that you want to hold. But if we break much further to the upside, the sharpness of this move up is already shown, very much like the yen carry trade, The mix has been the other side of the yen carry trade because it's 10.5% versus literally a 0.2% currency.
Right.
So this breaks much higher to the upside on a surprise US election. It is overbought at this level. And at 10.5%, you really would say if stability does prevail, I want to be long MEX at this level. However, you're right on the precipice of a break point, which could yield a substantial upside play to 2.22, which really is going to send this a lot higher.
Yeah, I mean you can see that move right here. It's completed that W formation to a T at this 20.05 level, but right here 22.13 could definitely be in play, and then even then you got continuation up towards
Right.
25. If that if
And
like
is
you
that
said if all the quants start following each other.
right?
Did anything surprise you in earnings? In general, my takeaway has been earnings are great, but forward guidance is scaring people. That would be my takeaway. I haven't seen many real misses. Coinbase was one of them, the crypto, platform, but most of these that have gone down, Microsoft was a beat, still got hit pretty hard. We've seen a few of them to both sides that way.
Earnings did not surprise me. They're better, but we like to say in the trading world, sometimes you need to poke your head above the forest to be able to see the horizon to get a view. When you're in the forest, it's very difficult to have a view. In that case, with a US election ahead of us, it is very difficult to have forward guidance that remains rosy and positive.
Right.
With the geopolitical risk in the world, and we haven't even mentioned Russia, Ukraine. At some point,
Yeah.
that's got to come to fruition here. But with that type of events it blocks your ability to accurately forecast ahead. And that's what these companies are beginning to tell us.
Yeah.
That could change very quickly if that situation pans out. So no surprise on earnings. They were good, and future growth will be good. And, when you see moves like Microsoft, it underscores my point of computerized trading today.
Yeah. Nothing was
When
going to
it,
save that when it started going down. Once it hit certain levels, you could just see again, like the multiplier add in. It was just boom, boom, boom. They couldn't catch a green candle for hours if you were looking at the 3-minute chart. So you definitely see that as a big part of it too. Um, my takeaway though is on this again is trying to stay a step ahead of what's coming. Is if that does come, I'm a buyer. Steve taught me very early during COVID. When these black swan events come, there are some ripe opportunities. So get this is where I do use the word wish. Get your wish list together as opposed to your watch list. And the wish list says if I can see, maybe, Apple at one, back at 200, I'm a buyer at that 10% more drop on a black swan event that Apple didn't really have any part of. Not its earnings based, not its, forward guidance based, but based upon world events. Those are the things that I'll look at, and again, that would hit, even at those levels. So those, that's what would advise people to do. Get your wish list together. Be aggressive with what those prices are, because if we're not talking about a day like yesterday, we're talking about a black swan event, and you have got the opportunity for three major catalysts in the next week or four. Quite honestly, the election, the rates, treasury rates, Israel and Ukraine, like you said. I mean, I almost forgot about that. But with North Korea supposedly joining with conscript group, troops, as that starts to play out, that definitely will start to take a toll. And again, after the election, doesn't matter who wins, it's going to be at the forefront of what's going on in Congress and the Senate. What we sometimes forget is why there's so much quiet there is all those people, and not all of them, but a big swath of them, are up for re-election. So they're busy right now. They'll get back on the pulpits come the day after elections. So I do
Yep, and
think.
having been in the markets since 1979 and trading, I've seen a number of black swan events. So I would air a yellow flag of major caution, because you don't want to step in front of a freight train and tell it to stop, because
That's for sure. Don't catch that knife either. Yes.
it's just not
You
going
want
to
things
happen.
to, and that's
So
why I
you've
say
got
have a wish list. Have your
right,
ideas. Don't just come in with a oh, it dropped, I'm buying now.
right.
It hit this level and I like this level.
Look
Um
look for the ingredients that kind of jump out. Let's go back to 2008, when Warren Buffett said that he's buying 5% of Goldman Sachs with an additional option for another 5%.
yeah.
That's the ingredient you're looking for in these black swan events.
Right.
I mean,
When one of the big guys steps in, if J.P. Morgan comes in to bail somebody out, if a Berkshire or one of these other companies that have all this money, it could also be when you start to see the merger and acquisitions that Steve's been talking about that we've seen already mentioned. Again, when you
yeah,
start to see those come in, that means that people in higher direction are have some more conviction in the market. Yeah, don't be the first. Don't try to lead that trend, but be
that's
ready
right.
to follow the trend. Be agile. Have money available again. Have your ideas in your head of what it is that you would want to have.
Yeah,
Your piece of that you maybe don't have right now. But that's a great insight. Is wait for somebody else to go first. Don't be the first
that's
to
right.
test that water.
My job was a risk manager. So, as a risk manager in the foreign exchange world, you want to measure the risk first. How black swan event, how much of a bad event is this? Measure it, then make your decision making. Look for the ingredients that come into place that you can make an accurate decision, and have a stop loss in mind always.
Always. We always trade with a stop loss, with a thesis, with a take
That's
profit
right.
points. Yeah, a trade is a three-part process. First, you enter the trade, you then manage the trade, and then you exit the trade. And all of those levels should be pre-decided. If it doesn't go the way, if you are, a little bit more aggressive and you have a bet, a feel, I think this is when I'm getting in, and you get in, and you do see SMCI would be the perfect example. Every time it takes another huge drop. I don't know if you've watched that at all. It started with Hindenburg, with one of their, short seller reports, and it just keeps going. And they've now hit that level, as I said, unlike Boeing, where I was, ready to dip my feet at certain levels. There is no level that I dip my feet here until I see that they actually find an accounting firm that's willing to deal with them, figure out what that issue was that the SEC is now investigating and determining whether they can come back from it. That's what can happen. This is one where I know a lot of people when it made this move down, first to 50 that said, okay, I'm buying in. I don't trust Heidelberg. It made that little recovery, but then the next drop came to 36, and now the most recent here down to, the 25 level. So there is no floor till zero, unfortunately, on some of these,
Yeah.
and they
A
don't all
low,
stay in business, right? What I would say is this is one that's obviously ripe, and I don't know enough about SMCI to know what they own versus what they don't, because in the world of chips, as you know, foundries have a lot of value, whereas in intellectual patents not as much. So what are they? Where are they in that lifespan, or that in that world would matter to whether they have sell-off capabilities. That's why Boeing also, if Boeing just sells its planes, off, or excuse me, Save. We were talking about Save. If Save had just sold off their airplanes, it was worth more than the company was valued. So when they sold a few of them, they saw that stock price move right back up. Those are things to look for. My man
uh,
Peter Lynch always liked that. Peter Lynch was a big fan of, if you break the company up and take its pieces, is it worth more than it is right now? So, well, I'm going to let you get out of here, get your weekend started. I know you got a lot of homework to do to be ready for
that's right.
Monday. Have a great weekend. Any final thoughts for me here, Stephen?
Well, let's just watch the situation carefully. Currencies will be exciting. Have a currency pair on your desktop. If you're trading US equities, understand money moves first, and the currency markets will give an early indication as to an explosive volatility break next week.
Absolutely. I love that as a thought, especially since it is the market that trades 24/7. So that is part of and parcel of part of that. So thanks again, and we will see you next week, Stephen.
Very good. Have a good weekend, Howard.
You too.